This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
With the election just a few days away, a look at two of the more contentious issues on the ballot, the local gas tax and the new school boards. Tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. We'll look tonight first at the gas tax with two people involved behind the gas tax to some extent, and then later in the show we'll have a couple people, one from the new Germantown School Board and then from the Unified School Board. But we start tonight with John Burgos, board member, MATA, former city councilman. Thank you for being here.
Good evening.
Also Bill Dries, reporter with Memphis Daily News. And Edmund Ford Jr., city councilman, who I believe originally proposed this gas tax. Yeah. Let me start with you, Councilman Ford. Okay. Why a gas tax?
When you look at MATA and 80% of those individuals who use public transportation to go to work or to try to find work, there's a lot of places that we can make our public transportation better. The City Council has taken some of its funding over time, to where, in turn, MATA has had to cut its services by 5% or more. You have over 40,000 people that use the bus every single day. And out of that 40,000, 32,000 of them are looking for work or are going to work. That's about 5% of our population. And you have about 84% of the jobs in Memphis that take an hour or longer to get there. And those individuals that may not have the physical means to drive, or they just may want to not necessarily drive. We should have those means just like St. Louis and like Atlanta, so that we can have as best public transportation as possible. The Brookings Institute actually had Memphis in the worst 30 in public transportation. Two other cities in the state, Knoxville and Chattanooga, made number 3 and 5 respectively in worst public transportation. If we could actually look at a designated funding source for MATA, not only would it be good for Memphis, it'd be good for employment and all those other things.
Let me bring you in here. You have been over the years, John, a critic of MATA, not of public transportation, I think, if I can represent your views, but of the way in which MATA spent money. Where do you stand on this gas tax, and what assurances do you have that the money will be spent wisely?
I've been critical of MATA for one reason and one specific reason only, and that's been the type of routes that MATA has run historically. I thought that they were convoluted, were not simple, were not direct. And MATA is changing that. We have instituted a short-term transportation plan that has revolutionized the routing system to a much more direct east-west, north-south grid system, which will make broader coverage, less wait time, less transfer time for the city of Memphis. And we can't really achieve that goal because we don't have a dedicated funding source, and this additional $3 million can help MATA over the hump. And
I mean, just on the basic math level, the fees you pay, the fares, that doesn't cover the transportation costs?
No, it doesn't cover that at all. And I will say this about MATA. You said I had been a critic. I think that MATA does a good job with putting buses on the road, getting people on those buses, getting people transported to and from within the confines of what they can do with the financial system and financial bond that they operate under.
Yeah. Bill.
Councilman Ford, by your estimate, I believe this is going to, 1 cent local gas tax, if the voters approve it, will raise $3 to $6 million annually. It is obviously that's not enough to cure all of the problems or expand to all of the areas that MATA would like to expand to. But what can it give us a start on in terms of having that annual recurring revenue for MATA?
Well, first of all, we could look at more bus routes. Correct, John. And we can look at other ways that people could be more accessible to MATA. When you look at 1 cent and from a fiscal perspective, gas will fluctuate, maybe $2, maybe $4. But at the end of the day, 1 cent on an average gallon of gas, and I appreciate you giving me this dime. This is the prop that I want to use. The average person would only spend this much a week if this gas tax passes. It'd be a dime, about 1.5, 2 cents a day. I have full confidence that the MATA board will look at this, and I already know that on their website they have a long list of the things that they would do to promote and to enhance public transportation.
To some extent, you talked, I think, before the show when we were talking, John, about making MATA a system of choice, and it's not. It's maybe not there in the sense yet of you don't have a lot of people abandoning their cars for MATA. The perception, at least, is that it's more people who really don't have another option. And how? I mean, is there an argument to be made that it doesn't take a cent for MATA? You need 10-cent tax. You need a whole lot more money because you've got to build a system that covers enough area, has enough routes, has enough frequency to draw not just 40,000 people in, but a whole lot more than that.
I don't know that it's as expensive as you say that it is. I think MATA's got two goals. Number one, we have to serve our base because those are the people that need it every day. And we also have to move to more choice riders because I think that is good for the city from an employment, from an energy point of view, from an environmental point of view, et cetera. But I do want to talk about specifically what MATA would like to do with these dollars. First, they want to upgrade 8 key corridor service routes, which many people see a lot of empty buses, but on these routes, the Poplar bus, the Elvis Presley bus, et cetera, those buses are full and they want to increase the frequency. They also want to add more drivers for MATA Plus to make it, for people with disabilities, to make it the city much more accessible for them. They do want to replace a lot of aging bus shelters, which people need if you're going to try to get more people on the bus. They would like to also add another line to the downtown trolley, another bus, to make it more accessible, which, believe it or not, it is wildly popular and wildly successful. So those are just some of the things that MATA can do. And just to comment about what Councilman Ford said about the penny, gas does go up and down. It varies, and people gripe about it from $4 to $2 to $3.10 back down. But it just surprises me the minute you decide to put 1 penny a gallon tax on it, people just go absolutely crazy. We're in such an anti-tax mode, and this is such a simple yet beneficial.
And part of that, where people go crazy, isn't it, is that they feel like, well, you're asking for that 1 cent tax for MATA, but it ends up going to X, Y, and Z. It goes to something else. And so what assurances do you give to people who are voting on this that, no, the 1 cent that you pay at the pump will go directly to buses, trolleys, and the MATA system?
Well, I think Councilman Ford can probably answer that question because he was one of those that sponsored the legislation.
Okay. First thing, by state law, it must go to public transportation. It can't go to a general fund. It can't go to any other services beside public transportation. 2, we can't ask for more than 1 penny on one particular referendum. So if this does pass, we can't levy 5 cents, we can't levy 10 cents, we can only levy 1 penny, and that penny has to go to public transportation. And the city council will determine after that where the money would go in that realm of MATA.
Okay.
MATA had a BRT, a bus direct route on Poplar that it tried, and it was taken out of service after a year, John. And there was some talk on the MATA board about that it wasn't adequately promoted. With the gas tax revenue coming in, is that going to change more or less, do you think?
We had a lot of discussions about that. There were 2 issues that we felt did not happen. Number one, we did not promote it as well as we could, and that does cost a little bit of money. Number 2, Chooch Pickard, who's on the board, was upset because it wasn't called the Poplar Avenue bus. They called it the number 22, and those numbers don't mean anything to people. And part of our short-term transportation plan is to start calling routes by the streets on which they run. The Poplar bus will be called the Poplar bus. The Bellevue bus will be called the Bellevue bus. And I'd like to make one comment about public transportation. This has always been my vision. If we can move to a simpler, more efficient system, is that we declare May 1st, 2013, Memphis Bus Rider Month, the beginning of it. In the meantime, we go to the public and we go to churches, community centers, and educate them on how they can run the bus. We go to the Chamber of Commerce, we go to City Hall, and we, on May 1st of that year, whatever the year is, we lock City Hall bus, the parking garages down, and we have people on the street directing people how to use the bus. And I really, truly believe as a civic venture that Memphis, it's small enough, compact enough, laid out in such a way that we could really change the dynamics of people riding the bus, let them bring their cups of coffee on the bus, let them do Wi-Fi, let them use their cell, let them get work done. And I really do think a city that can get people out of the cars and on the bus in a substantial way will be a city that will be looked upon as a progressive city. And it's also such a minimum, we're not talking about subways, monorails, right? We're talking about an efficient bus system, and that requires such a little amount of capital improvement. I think it's truly doable for a city of Memphis' size.
Let me ask one more thing. You mentioned wildly successful. I think you were talking about the trolley system. I mean, sometimes you hear critics who say it's just a tourist attraction. It's not really a part of public transportation. It's just tourists. Is that not the case? Is that a misperception by some folks?
We've worked a lot harder on making it the buses to be spaced more frequently and to run instead of having 5 buses every 1 minute and then having to wait. We've worked very hard to having buses spaced properly. And downtown Memphis is a very linear downtown. From one end to the other is a couple of miles. And so it is, when you're having 20,000+ people that live downtown, it actually is a mode of transportation for people that work downtown.
Well, and I guess the proponents would say that once Bass Pro comes in, whatever you think about that project, it eventually comes. There's a whole lot more going on the north end. There's already a tremendous. You go to a trolley night down on South Main, and it's just remarkable when you look at where downtown was before compared to it is now. So, all right. Well, thank you both. Election day is just right on the corner. Early voting is going on right now. We appreciate your time. Appreciate you being here. We will be right back with 2 people deeply involved in the municipal schools, the unified school system. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back. We move now to a conversation about the schools, and we are joined by Ken Hoover, who is running unopposed, I should say, for the Germantown Municipal School District. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Also, Chris Caldwell from the now Shelby County Board of Education, the Unified School District, as some folks call it. Thank you for being here. You just went through an election some weeks ago, a month ago. Also, Eleanor Boudreau from WKNO-FM. Thank you for being here. And Bill Drees still here with us. It is election time, and to some extent that's why we had you here, but it's a suspenseless election for you. We can congratulate you in advance. You're running unopposed. What is next? There are so many hypotheticals, so I'll try not to frame my questions with too many ifs and ifs. But you're running for the Germantown Municipal School Board, and yet at the same time you've got a federal case ruling questions of whether these school districts will be allowed, what shape they'll have. What do you do from day one of when you are elected with all those questions hanging over your head?
Well, the law of the land is that we can form a municipal school district. We can take certain steps towards the formation of a municipal school district that would culminate the same day that the consolidation occurs, or the same shortly after consolidation next August. So yes, there is a federal court case challenging the law of the land, but the law is the law today. So until Hardy Mays rules that something is wrong with the law, we will follow what's been outlined. So the election is November the 6th. We'll be sworn in December the 1st, and then we've got some major tasks to tackle quickly.
What do you do now, Chris Caldwell? You're right now in charge of these schools. You're planning to have those schools under your umbrella, but you've got a guy sitting next to you who's running to, and nothing personal, but to take it away from you all. How do you all, your planning process, is it 2 tracks at this point, that you're on the one hand planning for maybe Germantown and the other municipalities will be a part of it, or they won't? How much does that cause trouble for you all?
Well, I think the first responsibility we have is to make sure there's a school district in place, teachers in the classrooms, so that we can accommodate an entire district. So if we make those plans, I think, and the municipalities get their districts, I think that's an easier scenario to change than if we're planning on them having their own school districts and that doesn't happen. So We're following the TPC plan and making sure that schools are going to open on time, because that's really our responsibility, is to manage the entire district until we see that the district is composed of a different set of kids.
Eleanor.
Yeah, I mean, you said you're following the TPC plan, but that has sort of come into this sales tax referendum. You know, there's a lot of people who want more definitive votes from the school board. So how do you think that's going?
Well, I think those things are too mutually exclusive. One of the recommendations of the TPC plan was for us to look for other sources of income, because they left us with a $57 million gap, because they felt that's as far as they could cut without encroaching on the quality in the classroom. So in one regard, I think we're following that, and at the same time, what I've been working toward is to having a more transparent budget. And as a parent of 3 Memphis City Schools kids, I don't want to see anybody wasting a dime.
But it's a $57 million budget gap if you close more than 20 schools and privatize buses and janitorial staff. So it's those decisions that there are members of the community, including the mayor of Shelby County, Mark Luttrell, who wants to see those decisions made before the sales tax. And do you have how do you feel about that?
I think, you know, in my mind, the majority of the board is working to fulfill those obligations. And I think what you'll see, you know, we may not implement every recommendation to a T, but we will find savings. We will do our best to meet the gap. And for instance, let me give you an example of the 20 schools closing you mentioned. We closed Georgia Avenue last year. Until you know exactly which schools are closed, where the kids are going, what the programmatic capacity at the school they'll be going to, you don't really know what the savings are. In the case of Georgia Avenue, we had to spend $275,000 a year extra to bus the kids from one school to another. So to make an assumption that closing 20 schools translates to $20 million is just a guesstimate. So I think we're all committed to getting to the bottom line, but you can't just go blindly and just say yes, yes, yes. You have to look at the documentation and the true savings, because we're the ones that are going to have to answer to this, and we're responsible for it.
Bill.
And Ken, so you take office December 1st, and if there's no ruling by then, or if the ruling is that the municipal school districts stand, how far up the list, or is it at the top of the list, is picking a superintendent?
Well, I believe that's probably number one on the list. Mm-hmm. The two highest priority tasks are to hire a superintendent and to gain access to buildings.
And how much of a framework is already in place? Because I understand that some of the city leaders in the different suburban towns and cities have kind of been plotting this out tentatively with the idea that this will roll into action after the election results are certified.
Well, I think there's some, I don't think I know, there's some work underway today. The city staff in Germantown, and in a similar circumstance or similar scenario on the other municipalities, the city staff is doing some legwork. They've explored office space that we could lease on a temporary basis to serve as a central office. They've made arrangements for some search activity, the idea being that on December 1st, when we're sworn in, we will have a list of qualified candidates that we could immediately begin interviewing immediately after that.
Well, one of the big questions, you just mentioned it, we'll come back to it with both of you, is the buildings and that whole question. And it's a question, one, of how can they be transferred, how they'd be transferred, the debt service, is that being fairly distributed among the county, the various municipalities? Are there conversations in a way that you're aware of with city leaders in Germantown who are trying to negotiate some plan to get those buildings, or is it waiting on you all to go into office?
I think the more accurate answer would be that the way that we would all like to see this happen, and when I say all, I think including the Shelby County Board of Education, the way we would all like to see this happen is a negotiated settlement, an agreement, a contract that we sign between, in our case, the Germantown School District and the Shelby County School District. There are other ways that it could happen, but a negotiated agreement is the preferred path. The only body that can engage in the other side of that agreement is the Germantown Board of Education. The city of Germantown can't sign an agreement for buildings.
And the other ways you talked about, I mean, I'll just list two that I know, litigation and legislation. And have you all talked to legislators about pushing a bill that would clarify how those bills would be transferred? Or is that
I think the stance of the legislators, and in particular, you know, the namesake of Norris Todd, I think their stance would be, we've laid a framework, we've put in place a path that can be followed. You guys work together, follow that path, work it out. Please don't come back to Nashville to settle this.
And your take from your seat, the buildings, is that something that you guys have been able to talk about as a school board, or have you even gotten to that item in any depth?
Yes, we have a facilities committee that just came up with some policies. I think the main concern is our responsibility to the children. And as Ken mentioned, I think a negotiated agreement is the best thing. Whether that includes transferring the title. The obligation of our school board is to educate the kids that are in Shelby County schools, the school district. If that does not include kids in the municipalities for a few years, then naturally they need the buildings. But what happens if the cost and the expense of running a municipality, a municipal school district is much greater than they anticipated? So they give up. Where do those kids, you know, what do we do? Do they hand the buildings back to us, or say they're successful? And it displaces kids from the unincorporated areas, because if I'm correct, and I'm sure Ken knows all the numbers exactly, almost half the kids in Germantown that go to school there don't reside there. So you push the kids out that are in the unincorporated areas. It could mean anywhere from $300 to $600 million of new building construction. So as a board, we have to look at all the ramifications of any decisions we make, and you know, I'd like to think we'll do what's in the best interest of the kids, and I don't think you know, either of us should do something that would harm the other district.
What is your take? Since a couple of points there, the kids. Let's start with the kids that are now go to Germantown schools, but again are in unincorporated Shelby County. Do you foresee those kids getting pushed out and not having a school home in Germantown schools?
That's a horrible question to answer. So the short answer is no, I don't foresee that. The only thing that we've ever asked for is the 8 buildings that are in Germantown and all the kids that currently go there. Now, Chris pointed out that 8 years, 10 years, 12 years from now, the student population in Germantown may grow. Our goal is to create a school district that is second to none. The best in Tennessee, one of the best in the country. That's our goal. As Chris said, if we're successful in that goal, will that attract more students than what we have today? We have about 4,700 public school students in Germantown today. So Chris has got a valid question. What happens if our student population grows significantly beyond that 4,700 students? What does that mean? The student population within Shelby County has been shifting fairly dramatically for 40 years and at a reasonably steady pace over that whole period of time. We've built literally dozens of new schools in the suburbs and in the city. And yet our public school student population is roughly the same as it was in 1973. So that's not a new problem.
All right, last question probably from Eleanor.
Yeah, so a lot of the plans for the municipal school districts involve you working with the unified board and also with the other boards of the other municipalities, and that's a lot of people, more than 30 people, who don't all meet at the same time. So, you know, they have to decide on money and budgets, and how do you see that going down?
It's really not going to be 30 plus 7 or 23. It's not going to be 37 or 53 people trying to work things out. If you want to talk about a joint services contract for transportation or for food services or for textbook purchases or any place that we might share a service, the initial discussions will be between staff of our school district, staff of the Shelby County School District. Those staff will bring us a recommendation. So for our part, there'll be 5 people who vote on it. For Chris's part, there'll be 7 people who vote on it. We 5 won't be sitting with those 7 trying to hash this out. That'll come up from staff. And those things will happen easily where they make great sense, whether it's a win-win situation, it's better for us and better for the big district. Those things won't happen so easily when it's not a no-brainer, when it is less clear that it's the best way to go. And I think that we'll find our way on those. I don't perceive that or anticipate that being an issue.
let's get Bill, and we do have a little bit of time left.
How attractive do you think the municipal school districts are to employees in the existing 2 school systems? Is there going to be an ebb and flow between the systems?
Will we be able to hire people?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's an interesting question. One of the tragedies of this whole exercise, going back to December of 2010 right up to today with no signs of abatement, is the uncertainty that it has created for the people that work in the 2 school districts, that work in Shelby County Schools and Memphis City Schools. And they have specific questions that today don't have answers. From the Shelby County School unified system, there's some unanswered questions. The municipal systems, we can't answer any questions until we have a Board of Education. So a favorite is, are you going to recognize tenure that I earned in my home district? I'll go on record predicting that the answer for Germantown will be yes. That we will. I predict that, but it's still got to be voted on.
But is that how you would vote on it?
That's. I think school board members are told not to pledge that they will vote a certain way. I just predict that that's the outcome.
Okay. Let me. I'm going to end.
But there's a lot of unknowns, and there are questions.
And we have a bunch more questions. We're going to keep you guys. We're going to do a web extra. Please go to WKNO.org. We'll have another 5 or so minutes to answer a few more questions, ask a few more questions, get Chris Caldwell back in. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week. And also, please go to WKNO.org for a web extra with more questions, more answers on the school situation. Thanks. Good night.